Welcome to our Fireside Chat series at TAZI. I'm Zehra, the CEO and co-founder of TAZI, and today I'm joined by Mike Meinolf from FinMain, and we are going to be discussing very interesting topics from safest ways to implement AI in different use cases, to data quality challenges, to risk management, AI-driven risk management, rapid AI implementation, and also AI and GenAI use cases and how to implement AI use cases ethically. It will be, I'm sure, a very interesting conversation. Mike, welcome. Could you introduce yourself to us first?
Sure. I'm Mike Meinolf. I'm the CIO at FinMain. I've been with this company for about 2 years. We are a startup based in New York City that focuses on cloud-based technology solutions for mid-sized banks, which includes anything from online account opening to data management to even helping them, think about interesting use cases for artificial intelligence. Prior to my stint at FinMain, I was the CIO at Associated Bank, which is a mid-sized bank, about $46 billion in assets, headquartered in Green Bay, Wisconsin. And prior to that, I was at the clearinghouse. So I've been in financial services technology for over 25 years in various roles, and happy to be here today.
We are glad to have you here, Mike. Thank you so much. So you mentioned use cases. I want to start with that. Which use cases have you seen to be the safest to implement with AI? And I'm asking this because in our conversations, we are seeing safety, compliance as the number one thing to be handled first, and we do. So in your experience, which use cases are the safest to implement with AI?
I think that the safest are going to be any that involve data that's not PII or personally identifiable information, right? So the easiest thing to do is to leverage something like a large language model to extract data that, first off, already belongs to the bank and maybe, at least initially, is pretty banal in nature, right? Just to, demonstrate the capability of being able to extract meaning out of what could be large amounts of data that isn't sensitive and provide context for those that are looking for it. I think that's one of the easiest, quickest use cases, very demonstrative. Now with, of course, Copilot and Microsoft working together, it's a pretty easy way to show value in terms of efficiency and what can be gained with the large amounts of data that a lot of financial institutions already have without exposing it to too much risk.
Thank you. And you mentioned a few, but what are you seeing the banks doing in terms of those use cases?
Yeah, so first and foremost, I see a lot of use of large language models to try to, again, help with the extraction of certain, what I'll call internal knowledge for operational folks, right? There's a lot of procedural documents that are unique to a bank. And oftentimes it's difficult to find those procedures on the fly. And so certainly it's very helpful if I can use like a natural language search to pull something up just in time when I need it. I've seen a lot more use of AI in terms of what I'll call fraud analytics and risk management, where at least initially taking a look at data vectors that might be anonymized, at least at first, to look for behavioral patterns that look a little out of the ordinary. I think banks see that as a huge opportunity to get better and faster at identifying fraud. Because usually what fraud is, or fraud indicators, are usually some sort of behavioral pattern that is not typical for a customer. And AI is very good at pattern recognition. So when there's something that's deviating from a pattern, it's very good at identifying those deviations. And not necessarily, I'm not seeing a lot of interdiction at this point where they're saying, hey, model, come in and stop something proactively, but help our humans, our fraud teams, identify which things are the highest risk. We have limited time and resources, so help me focus on the things that are most important. And AI is very good at that, filtering out the things that are maybe less important, helping me to prioritize my work as a fraud analyst.
That's awesome. I like that, and that ties up actually to my other question. We are inundated by the amount of data. One of the reasons why we need AI is As humans, we can look at 10 different flags, and then we can create our segments or patterns, and then we live in that world. And then what the AI has the advantage of is the ability to look into hundreds of variables, data columns, and then extract patterns and then bring it to us. But to extract patterns, AI need good quality data, and data quality is often a significant hurdle in AI projects. How do you approach the data quality challenges, and how do you ensure accurate and reliable AI outcomes? What are the steps?
For sure. Most banks have this challenge, right? And I think the good news is, and you'll rarely hear me say this, but there are some times when the regulators really help jumpstart initiatives at a bank that they actually can leverage in multiple facets. So one of those is data governance. And the regulators are expecting robust data governance for all sorts of reasons within a bank. And I think that's probably the first thing you have to do. It's very important to have robust data governance frameworks. And once you've created those frameworks and you have an established practice of what that's going to look like, then you can start using data normalization and validation techniques to ensure that the data is reliable. Now, there's lots of ways to do that. That's obviously the harder part. But believe it or not, there's actually, there's AI tools that can actually help you in terms of, again, validating that your data is consistent, can help you monitor data quality in real time. That was a lot harder previously, usually driven by external queries and those kind of things, taking data sampling. But now there are, I think, are more sophisticated systems to help with that. I think it's also important to really, within the data governance frameworks and teams, that you're building cross-functional teams. So data teams that are just a team of data scientists or just data analysts and not really thinking about other customer use cases that can lead to some problems. They can help you monitor data integrity because one, they know where the bodies are buried, right? They know where the data is coming from. And so having people from different varied groups, not just technical folks, involved in the data governance process, I think helps one, create the sense of ownership stake across the organization, which you need to ensure data integrity. That if you have only one group that seems to care about it, then only one group's going to care about it. But if the organization as a whole has some sort of skin in the game, everybody's going to start taking data integrity and data quality very seriously. So I think, again, start with the governance frameworks, make sure you have a good governance program, making sure that it's somebody's job to be in charge of that the governance is not only established but enforced, and then leveraging technology to help you with that. And again, including groups from multiple areas that can help keep things going, I think are all important elements.
I love that, especially the business teams, like bringing them in, especially cross-functional. I think that really allows a lot of mistakes that would not otherwise have been caught by traditional data quality metrics. Actually, we just had a Forbes article published this Tuesday on data quality and how to measure it using also AI rapid prototyping tools, which means give every business analyst, business intelligence person goggles that allow them to look at data from different perspectives, different use cases, and see exactly where, in what way data isn't what it is supposed to be. So I found that also to help as an additional way to understand and improve data quality. Another question I have, this is a set of use cases, the risk management part. Can you share some perspectives on how AI has transformed risk management? And when I say risk management, I mean to predict the market trends, to assess the credit risk, to prevent fraud. How are you leveraging AI-driven models for those tasks?
Yeah, so what we're seeing is a lot of people using it, at least initially, for any kind of anomaly detection. I touched on this a little bit earlier, but really, AI is very good at pattern recognition. So when something is out of the ordinary, AI is very good at identifying that and calling it out. And that can really be behavior, and we're seeing behavior on both sides. So it can be actual behaviors that seem to be out of the norm, and it can be lack of behavior that's out of the norm. So when we think of one of the more significant risk vectors at especially mid-sized institutions is this notion of dormant accounts, right? And the reason why that's a risk is typically accounts that have been at the bank for a while tend to improve with age relative to the amount of leeway these banks give people with accounts in terms of funds availability and maybe access to products and services that they wouldn't necessarily give to somebody that just opened an account yesterday, right? And so the fraudsters have figured out that we can open up these accounts legitimately. We can let them marinate for a period of time. And the longer they've marinated, the more, for lack of a term,
Trust.
damage I can do because I'm getting this layer of trust, right? A good use that we've seen of AI is that detecting when an account of a certain age, you'd expect it to have had so many X direct deposits, so many checks drawn, so many bills paid, so many transactions on a debit card. And if you're not seeing that level of activity, it could mean simply that somebody's just not engaged, right? And maybe this is not their primary account. Or it could mean that they literally, it's just some bad guys keeping the account warm, waiting to do something negative with it. And that's easily solvable, right? And this is where the humans can come in is look, if I bring this account to somebody's attention, I can proactively reach out. It's actually a sales opportunity. Hey, we've noticed you haven't used your account. Is there something that you're confused about? Maybe we can help you with this. Or if I attempt that reach out and I can't seem to get a hold of the person or the number is not real or something else that would indicate that there's something not right about the account, I can take proactive steps to put maybe proactive controls on it. That, hey, look, this isn't being used. We tried reaching out. We can't seem to engage the person. And just for the safety and soundness of our institution, we are going to put back in place some guardrails that maybe would have fallen off automatically because of the age of the account, right? So definitely seeing that. I think the predictive analytics, I think you touched on this a little bit. What's next? I think a benefit to customers is, and you'll see this in search, right? Is that people aren't moved away from give me as many choices as possible to give me a list of curated choices. And so I think where certainly on the, not necessarily the risk perspective, but on the analytics perspective, banks see this as an opportunity to really start honing product offerings to people that it's more than just age and stage, right? It can really get into a depth of offerings and say, based on your behaviors, I can actually recommend things that can help you make more money, save for a house, save for a car, save for a boat, whatever it is, in a way that is much more meaningful, right? We as a species of late, right, have been inundated with a myriad of choices in all things. And it gets overwhelming for a lot of people, not just in financial services, but really in anything. And so if we can curate those results to something that's more tailored to me personally and my usage of the account personally, one, the banks aren't wasting their time trying to sell me a product that I'll never, want or desire to have. And I feel, honestly, as a person, the bank knows who I am, right? That they're really looking out for me. They're trying to help me improve my financial health, right? I mean, to me, it's no different than having good recommendations for Netflix, right? It's just most people, over 70%, at least the last metric I saw, do not find new content on Netflix, as an example, by just random searching. They find it based on the recommendations that the engine makes, right? And we're seeing that transform, I think, across search. And you'll see that eventually, I think, even generic searches, right? I don't need to be presented with a list of 30,000 results. I just need to be presented with 3 of the right results, right? And that's what we're going to see, I think, more tailored offerings across all different services.
I see. And what I like about that cross-functional use case, right? Offering the right products, but also having an idea on whether there could be a fraudulent situation here or not, preventing it from happening. I really like that, and I think having those connections between silos really help humans increase the quality of the context so we can make best decisions, but also it also helps AI models too. Instead of having a general fraud model or general risk model, obviously for both generative AI or AI models, the same is true. So being able to define the context and then creating solutions within and for that context could actually prove to be much more accurate. So AI is just like humans in that sense. The more well-defined the context is, the better they give results. I want to change the topic here to rapid AI
Sure.
implementation. Once we actually implemented a customer complaints classification use case in 2 weeks, and I still remember the customer being surprised and saying, like, how could you achieve this? We just gave you 2 Excels, and how do we have these insights right in front of us in just 2 weeks? So I want to ask you, how can we, in general, can everybody achieve rapid AI implementation? Because if somebody has a need and then that implementation takes like months and months, people don't really have that patience anymore. So what factors have helped you accelerate AI deployment within your teams?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, if you partner with experienced AI partners, that helps a lot. You don't want to have two people that are learning and feeling their way in the dark at the same time, right? So getting somebody that's experienced with AI and AI implementations is probably the best thing anybody can do if they're looking to introduce AI into their environment and produce some rapid, quick wins. But simplistically, I'd say just simple agile methodologies, right? Your AI projects, make sure they're broken into smaller, manageable pieces, right? You don't, if your goal is to replace, and making this up, entire call center with an AI powered machine learning bot that's going to take care of everyone's questions, and that's your goal, that's fine. But you got to be able to break that up into pieces that are demonstrative, right? To get some quick wins. You can't just leap to the end. Think of it, software development's been doing this for decades, right? The understanding that breaking it into small manageable pieces that can be quickly prototyped and demonstrated to prove value is a fantastic way to show value quickly and to keep building upon that value. And so in order to do that, just like with agile development, right, you need to have people that understand and have clear business outcomes, right? So that's key. And then you can align, of course, your AI initiatives to those business outcomes. But you need to have a leader, right, from a business perspective that says, this is what I'd like to be able to demonstrate. And then working with experienced AI partners and experienced, certainly, software implementers, thinking of ways then, if that end business outcome is relatively complex, what pieces would make sense to break it up into that would show value along the way, right? And then being very clear and clear communication around that plan and how we're going to get there. That'll show, if you break it up in the right way with the right business outcomes, you're going to show some immediate value, right? That's why I think automation of manual processes is always a good one, because there's certain elements that you may not take the entire process and say, we've eliminated human interaction from this very complex process. But what we have done is we've made that process much more efficient for the humans that are there, maybe starting with that. And then slowly but surely continue to whittle away at that process to where all that's left is maybe something that is maybe more of the exception than a rule to a process, which unfortunately you always have exceptions, right? And that just, again, frees up an enormous amount of time and efficiency for people. And so that's, again, it's a really easy way to show a quick win, is because people understand you've got a process that's painful today. I'm not going to commit to saying that the process is going to be gone tomorrow, but I can assure you that within a very short period of time, it's going to get better. And then it's going to constantly get better. And people feel that, right? And people can see that. Yeah, this used to take me 6 hours, and now it takes me 4 hours. And now it takes me 2 hours. Now it takes me 30 minutes. Now it takes me 5 minutes, right? That's a very quantitative way of measuring success, and it resonates with a lot of folks. So.
That's awesome. And I'm thinking about the use cases, similar use cases we implemented. And one of the concerns people have is, will AI take my job? If efficiency increases, am I going to be out of a job? And we have seen 30% to 300% efficiency increases, and nobody lost their job because of AI. To the contrary, organizations realize other higher value things that needed to be done, and they couldn't get around to it. And they already have their people who know their processes so quickly. They switch people to those processes that require more attention from humans. So I'm seeing actually more effective utilization of human expertise when AI is able to automate tasks in that way. So yeah, I'm very happy to see that personally.
And that's a
Yeah,
great point, because I think, so if I
yeah,
go back to our fraud example for a second, most fraud analysts can only look at the surface of many things, right? But wouldn't it be great if they could go a lot deeper in the things that really matter, right? That's where I think you get this marriage of efficiency and effectiveness, and that's really what the value is, right? It's not so much, I think people's initial gut reaction is like, the efficiency allows me to replace, but it's more about the efficiency allows your personnel to be much more effective, to do more with the same number of people, right? I can do a lot more quality work with the same number of people, and the output is just vastly improved. And so I think the ability to use AI is critically important. I think in the future, certainly you'll see some jobs that probably are less common because of AI, but I think what's going to be more common is if you have one person that understands how to leverage AI as a tool to make themselves more effective and another person that does not, that's the differentiation, right? Learn how to use the tools, learn how to say, I'm in this role, but I'm in this role powered with my knowledge of AI. That's a much more effective employee and role than the role that where the person maybe is not as familiar with how to leverage AI effectively.
yeah, I totally agree. And this is another thing that really excites me is when I see the collaboration between AI and domain experts. There is usually a mess of things that you have done. Different people have done different things, and your organization is going in the right direction. But then when somebody asks you, how do you make this decision? You're like, I don't know. Like 10 people make 10 different decisions. And then what I'm seeing and what really excites me is when you put an AI, but AI explains itself to domain experts, and the domain experts understand about what they have done and what their colleagues have done. So they actually have a better understanding of what they were doing. And then they also see the deficiencies of AI. So they teach AI. Suddenly, domain experts become better
Mhm.
at what they do. And then AI learns from them, it gets better. So it's really like 1+1, I don't know, who knows, 5 situation. And basically, a common language can be built, and it has to be the domain person's language, domain expert's language, so that there is a cooperation between AI and human. And I'm really excited about those collaborations. Another question I have for you is the AI and Gen AI. And I'm asking this because of a very particular use case. Are you seeing, once an organization has AI, are you seeing expansion to other use cases across the organization? Or once they have Gen AI, they don't have to start with AI. They can also start with generative AI. Are you seeing potential high value, low cost, or high value, low effort use cases that combine AI and generative AI solutions?
Yeah, I think at this point, I would say most financial institutions are probably more in the Gen AI space because it's just easily accessible and it's somewhat understood and the limitations are understood and those kind of things. I do think that where the next logical expansion and where certainly financial institutions have been looking and what I'm seeing is this ability to, again, leverage artificial intelligence to make some financial decisions relative to basically the ability to lend to an individual, as an example. What are some factors that could be used, again, to make sure, and a lot of institutions are looking for ways to expand and cast a wider net. That's really what they're looking for, is help me find more ways to be able to say yes. Certainly, and we can probably talk about ethics here in a second, certainly there's this notion of I want to be able to predict which of my customers are going to be the most profitable, as an example. But I also think that a lot of institutions feel that they are, with traditional methods, are missing parts of their customer base because they don't necessarily fit into a neat box. And so what I'm seeing is more experimentation with trying to leverage artificial intelligence to expand the box in a way that the only way I can put it is helps them overturn stones and look in places they normally wouldn't look for people that may go underserved. When you look at just traditional models, if I just look at credit score alone, and I say I'm not going to even look at anybody with under a certain threshold, banks and financial institutions realize that they're missing out, right? There's more than just credit score that can define somebody's willingness to participate in the financial ecosystem. And so AI can really help identify some of those other factors that it's like you don't even know what you don't know. But this is where having good data can help, is allowing the artificial intelligence to basically expose and explain and demonstrate that people that maybe are below your this one threshold but have these other characteristics can certainly, they're actually just as good as risk with somebody with a higher threshold, and you're missing out right now because they don't meet the first criteria. So that's really where the next I see the expansion is, and there again, the eye here is looking at expanding the net, not to contract, right? It really is to say we know we're missing out using these traditional methods. How do we allow more people into the tent? How do we expand that so we can get more people in without just making some arbitrary, right now, decades old, using decades old criteria that doesn't take into account the real life complexities of people's day-to-day lives, right? It's really hard to see those patterns if you're just looking at a human and trying to do data analytics, right? You've got to kind of fish through things. AI can make that very efficient and say, hey, you're missing out on an entire segment because of these behaviors that are positive behaviors that you may not even realize are happening because you can't look at the big picture the way AI can look at an entire timeline all at once, right? That's the beauty of it, right? It has all the knowledge at its fingertips all at once rather than having to look as a human. I have to look at things in increments because I can't simply process it all in one go.
Mike, ethical AI is a hot topic, especially in financial services. And as TAZI, we are involved in a research project as a partner. The project is called Trust AI, which stands for Transparent, Reliable, and Unbiased Smart Tool. And it aims to achieve not only helping humans understand the AI models better, but also promoting interactions between humans and machines. And my question for you is, how should financial institutions implement AI and generative AI in an ethical way to keep the balance between innovation and customer privacy?
I think you touched on projects like Trust AI, and I think that's incredibly important, right? Because I think, first off, if AI in financial institutions, first and foremost, there has to be transparency in the models. And the reason being, obviously, is that they have to be able to mitigate any kind of bias within those models. And it's almost impossible to do that if you don't really understand what's happening, right? In banking, every decision has to be audited. So I think it's incredibly important to understand. It's great that the decision was made and it may have been made automatically, but why was the decision made? And can it be defended? That's incredibly important. You touched on privacy. I think if you can't have privacy at a bank reputationally, I think you're in a lot of trouble. So I think banks have had to deal with this balance between innovation and strict privacy rules for a long time. But I think if there's any group that's at least used to it and understands how to navigate and work that balance, it is financial institutions. They're not going to compromise on privacy, right? But as I said before, I think all customers would tell you that they might trade a little privacy for efficacy and for relevancy. And so I think that's really where you have to understand that balance. And again, as long as you're clear and transparent as to, why maybe you're tipping the scales a little bit less on the privacy side to increase kind of the output on the efficacy and effectiveness side of the equation, that I think customers can get bought into that, right? They want to know what's happening and what you're doing. And that's something that I think from an ethics perspective, it's going to be this notion of, hey, I'm telling you exactly what it is that we're doing. In fact, that we're actually leveraging AI to help make some decisions in certain cases. And here's what the benefit is to you, the customer, if you allow us to do this. I think with it, like anything else, you have to have the ability to have customers opt out if they don't want to participate, right? I will say that I think over time, you're going to see more and more customers that certainly want to opt in for that curated experience. I think it just is something that just people are used to in their everyday lives. They see it all the time. Like I was just saying before, it's like Netflix, but it's the same thing. I think Amazon, it's the same thing with a myriad of other digital experiences, including Facebook and Instagram, some for good, some for bad. But the idea is that they are used to having curated experiences. And when it's just meaningless experience, not relevant to them, they disengage. And I think most customers are aware of that. And so in the banking space, you definitely don't want to turn the knob all the way to full engagement. But the idea is maybe just a little bit where, guys, we want to make this more meaningful to you. And the only way to do that is I need some of your information. Here's how we're using it. But again, be able to defend that usage at any given moment, right? Constantly auditing the models. You got to look at them for bias. Something doesn't feel right, cannot be afraid to shut it down, so to speak, or to disengage in some way. And I think the more control people demonstrate over what's happening and transparency, the more people will get comfortable that the AI is being used in a very ethical way, right? I don't think there's anybody that would be opposed to the fact of using AI if you told me that, one, if I just decide to use my card at Home Depot randomly, you're not going to block my card. While that may not be a typical transaction for me, but it's not fraudulent because of a bunch of other factors, versus some fraudsters get a hold of my card and start racking up a bunch of charges at a place where I do frequent, maybe at a gas station or somewhere else, and you block that immediately for my protection. That's a great use of saying, wow, I'm really happy that I was able to share enough information with you for you to make meaningful decisions. So you're not providing friction in my life. You're actually helping me avoid problems, more significant problems. I think you'll get people bought in, no question about it, but there has to be transparency, which I think is going to lead to people believing there is an ethical intent here, right? The minute that people are less transparent, disingenuous about their use and the usage of AI models, maybe not auditing as frequently as they should, people are going to distrust it, right? And they're going to prefer to opt out. And I think that's going to be to the detriment of an overall experience.
Thank you. I love that. And to summarize, what I see is not just explanations of AI to domain experts, but also the relevant explanations of what AI does, how it works to the actual customer, and giving them the ability to opt in or to opt out when they want to, so that they have total control, and letting customer know that as an organization, you can protect the customer, and knowing their context better, you can offer them better products so that they are going to be spending less, saving more, and so on. So I really like that, not just being, instead of saying I'm going to be ethical and I'm not doing anything, saying, okay, I'm doing this and problems might happen, but if they do, we are having an open line of communication. I really like that.
For sure.
Thank you so much, Mike. I want to
Mm-hmm.
summarize what we have covered in this exciting conversation. We discussed use cases of AI and generative AI, safest ways to implement them. How can you implement data quality measures? How do you do risk management using AI? How do you implement AI projects rapidly and using AI and generative AI together. And I can't imagine we have covered so much. And finally, we also talked about ethical AI in finance. This has been a very interesting conversation, and it's also great working with you, Mike. I want to also personally thank you. In every
Thank you.
conversation, I have learned something from you, and a lot also in this conversation. And I want to thank you for this collaboration and also for all the other work we have done together and for your leadership. Before we conclude, I just want to ask you, are there any concluding remarks or comments that you would like to add?
Well, the only thing I'll say is that I think we're at an inflection point relative to the use of AI. I don't think we've really encountered a technology that has been so rapidly adopted in all of human history that we have in the last year, starting with OpenAI and ChatGPT that we have with artificial intelligence. I'm hoping that, first off, I'll say this is not a fad. This is not going away. This is something that is now going to be, I think, a core tenet of really any significantly efficient operating model and operating infrastructure going forward. I'm always happy to talk about artificial intelligence because, again, it not only is it fairly new and rapidly evolving, I think we haven't even begun to scratch the surface of its potential. Super excited, and thank you so much for inviting me here today to talk about it. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. And as we are building it all together, I'm sure we'll discover very interesting and very useful use cases together. Thank you so much, Mike.